The auction barn in rural Montana was packed that autumn afternoon. The scent of hay and dust hung in the air, while anxious voices and the auctioneer's hammer echoed through the weathered structure. In the center of the space, contrasting with the energy around him, a white horse stood motionless. His thin body displayed scars from a difficult past, and his empty gaze seemed to have given up long ago. Emma Sullivan watched from the last row, feeling something inexplicable as she observed the animal. The 20-year-old adjusted her hat, partially hiding her face while listening to the comments around her. "That one's worthless," muttered a middle-aged man to his companion. "About 2 weeks won't last another year," replied the other, making no effort to hide his disdain. "Might as well put it down now," concluded a third, casually sealing the animal's fate with cruel words. The auctioneer cleared his throat, visibly uncomfortable. "We have here a white horse, estimated age between 7 and 9 years. Any opening bid?" The silence that followed was answer enough. Nobody wanted to invest in an animal that seemed beyond salvation. For most, that horse had no purpose. The auctioneer sighed. "If there's no interest, I'm afraid we'll have to. I'll take him." Emma's firm voice cut through the air like an arrow. The entire room turned to stare at the young woman who was now standing. Her face, partially hidden beneath the brim of her hat, maintained a determined expression. "Are you sure, miss?" asked the auctioneer, surprised by the unexpected interest. "I am," she replied, approaching the center. "How much?" When Emma left the auction leading the white horse toward her old truck with a trailer, she ignored the pitying looks and muffled laughter. As she helped the animal into the trailer, she whispered near his ear, "You're safe now, we're going home." The journey to the small ranch she had inherited from her grandfather Jackson was long and silent. Through the rearview mirror, Emma occasionally observed the horse, which remained static, as if not believing the sudden change in his fortune. Horizon Ranch, as her grandfather called it, wasn't what it used to be. The fences needed repairs, the barn needed a new coat of paint, and only 3 other horses remained in pastures that once housed dozens. But it was still home. When they arrived, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in orange hues. Emma guided the horse to a clean stable with fresh water and abundant hay. He hesitated at the entrance as if suspecting some kind of trap. "It's okay," she said, maintaining a respectful distance. "This is your space now." The horse entered slowly, his eyes examining every corner, his body tense like a violin string about to snap. When Emma tried to approach to remove the old rope halter, he jerked back sharply, hitting the stable wall. She raised her hands in a peace gesture. "No rush, we have time." Leaving water and food within the animal's reach, Emma backed away, sitting on a nearby bench. Night fell completely as she observed the horse from a distance. He didn't touch the food, didn't drink the water. He just remained motionless, vigilant, as if waiting for the moment when his true punishment would begin. "My grandfather always said a horse isn't just an animal." Emma spoke softly into the silence of the stable. "It feels, chooses, trusts, and when it trusts you, it's forever." She paused, absorbing the memory of the man who had raised her. "But to trust, you need to have hope first." That's why he named this place Horizon Ranch. The white horse just stared at her with eyes that seemed to have seen too much, felt too much. Emma smiled sadly. "I'm going to call you Spirit," she decided, "because that's what we need to rescue in you." Emma woke with the first ray of sunlight, as she had done since she was a child. It was a habit cultivated by her grandfather, who always said dawn was sacred for those who worked with the land and animals. She dressed quickly and walked to the stable, anxious to see how Spirit had spent the night. The hay remained untouched, the water at the same level. The white horse was in exactly the same position, like a living statue, his eyes still vigilant. Only the slight movement of his chest indicated he was alive. "Good morning," she greeted, keeping her distance. She changed the water and hay, speaking continuously in a low voice so he would get used to her presence. "You need to eat, you know. We can't start our work if you don't have strength." But Spirit remained steadfast. When Emma tried to approach again, he pressed himself against the wall, ears back, body trembling slightly. 3 days passed like this. Emma cared for the other horses, fixed fences, performed the daily ranch tasks, and always dedicated hours just sitting near Spirit's stable, talking or simply being present. The horse barely touched his food, drinking only enough to stay alive. On the 4th morning, Emma found an unexpected visitor parking a worn-out Jeep in front of the house. Olivia Parker, the local veterinarian specializing in rescue cases, was getting out of the vehicle carrying her bag. "Heard you adopted the lost cause from the auction," commented the older woman, her experienced eyes evaluating Emma. "I thought you might need some help." Olivia was known for her skill with traumatized animals. She had worked with Emma's grandfather for decades, and although she was blunt to the point of harshness, her heart was genuine. Together, they walked to the stable. Spirit, seeing the stranger, tried to merge even more with the wall. Murmured Olivia, observing him critically. "He's been abused. It's not just weakness, it's fear. Someone broke him." "Broke him?" repeated Emma, feeling something tighten in her chest. "Physically, emotionally." The veterinarian pointed to almost imperceptible marks on the animal's hind legs. "See these marks? Cruel spurs, and here," she indicated scars in his mouth. "Severe bit. Someone tried to break him through pain." Emma felt a lump in her throat. "Can I help him?" Olivia studied her at length before answering. "You have your grandfather's patience. You'll need it. This horse doesn't trust humans, and with good reason." She took some vials from her bag. "This will stimulate his appetite. Mix it with soft oats, and this," she handed another vial, "for his muscles. It will ease the pain he's probably still feeling." Before leaving, Olivia gave Emma an old book. It was your grandfather's, about natural communication with horses. No force, no domination, just understanding. During the following weeks, Emma established a routine. She spent hours just sitting near Spirit's stable, reading aloud from her grandfather's book. She kept her distance, never forced contact. When she brought food, she placed it and backed away, allowing him to eat without feeling threatened. Slowly, Spirit began to eat more regularly. His eyes followed Emma when she moved around the stable, no longer in panic, but with cautious curiosity. One afternoon, as Emma sat reading on the bench, something extraordinary happened. Spirit took a step toward her. A single step, almost imperceptible, but it spoke volumes. She continued reading, pretending not to notice, but her heart accelerated with hope. "Communication isn't about words," she read, "but about intention. A horse feels what you really want, not what you say you want." On the 20th day since his arrival, when Emma entered the stable with a soft brush, Spirit didn't back away. He remained still, watching her with eyes that were beginning to lose their opacity. With slow, deliberate movements, she approached, always speaking softly. "I'm just going to pass this over your coat," she explained, showing the brush. "If you don't like it, I'll stop." The first touch was a breath-holding moment. Emma expected him to flee, to react negatively, but Spirit just trembled slightly before allowing himself to relax a bit. As she gently passed the brush through his neglected coat, silent tears ran down the young woman's face. "That's it," she whispered. "You're doing so well." It was a small step but significant, a fragile bridge being built between two wounded souls seeking healing. The Montana summer arrived with full force, bringing scorching days and occasional violent storms. Spirit had progressed considerably in recent weeks. He now accepted Emma's touch, allowed himself to be brushed, and had even begun to walk alongside her in the small paddock adjacent to the stable. His eyes had changed. Where before there was only emptiness, now there was a spark, timid, hesitant, but present. He was gaining weight. His coat was beginning to acquire a healthy shine, and occasionally, when he thought no one was watching, he trotted around the paddock with surprising elegance. Emma had never tried to ride him. Instinctively, she knew that barrier was still too high to cross. Instead, she focused on ground exercises, establishing basic commands, and above all, building trust. One afternoon, while they were working in the larger paddock, Olivia returned for a checkup. She observed in silence as Emma guided Spirit through a simple following exercise. "Impressive," commented the veterinarian when they finished. "I never thought I'd see this horse trust anyone again." Emma smiled, stroking Spirit's neck. "We still have a long way to go." Olivia approached carefully, extending her hand for the horse to smell. Spirit hesitated but didn't back away. "He has good conformation," she observed. "Under all that distrust, there's a noble animal, good bloodline probably." While examining the horse, Olivia noticed something on his left flank. "Sios, what's this?" She carefully parted the hair, revealing an almost faded mark. "I never noticed that before," admitted Emma, leaning to see better. "Looks like a breeder's mark," murmured Olivia, distorted by scars, but the sky suddenly darkened, interrupting the conversation. Heavy black clouds advanced rapidly, and the air acquired that peculiar density that precedes major storms. "Better get all the animals inside," advised Olivia, looking worriedly at the horizon. "Looks like something strong is coming." Emma nodded, leading Spirit back to the stable while Olivia said goodbye, promising to investigate the mark. She barely had time to accommodate all the horses before the first thunders shook the air. The storm hit with unexpected fury. Torrential rain lashed the stable roof, while lightning illuminated the sky at increasingly shorter intervals. Emma checked each stall, making sure all animals were safe. When she reached Spirit's stall, she found him agitated. His ears were back, and he was nervously pawing the ground. "It's okay," Emma tried to calm him. "We're safe here." A particularly strong thunder exploded, making the entire stable vibrate. It was like triggering a switch. Spirit went into total panic, neighing and throwing himself against the stall walls with enough force to make the wood crack dangerously. "Spirit, calm down." Emma tried to approach, but the horse was beyond reason, dominated by a primordial terror. With a powerful kick from his hind legs, he shattered the stall door and bolted out of the stable directly into the storm. "No!" shouted Emma, running after him. The rain hit her like a wall of freezing water. In seconds, she was soaked to the bone, but that didn't matter. All she could think about was Spirit, terrified, running blindly under the storm. Through the curtain of rain, she glimpsed his white silhouette galloping toward the hills. Emma ran, slipping in the mud, calling for him, even knowing her voice was being swallowed by the elements. The darkness and rain made it difficult to see. Emma slipped down a steep bank, rolling several meters before managing to steady herself. She got up, ignoring the pain in her scraped knee, and continued. After almost an hour of frantic searching, she found him cornered in a small ravine. Spirit was violently trembling, covered in mud, his eyes wide with terror. Each lightning made him back away, but he had nowhere to go. Instead of trying to capture him, Emma knelt in the mud a few meters away. "You're not alone," she said, her voice almost inaudible under the storm. "I'm here, I'm not leaving." And she stayed there, soaked, shivering with cold, just talking to him. She told stories about the ranch, about her grandfather, about how storms always pass. Gradually, she approached, inch by inch. When she finally managed to touch him, Spirit didn't back away. His body was still trembling, but something had changed in his eyes. For the first time, he truly saw her, not as a threat, but as a safe harbor. Together, slowly, they made their way back to the ranch as the storm began to subside. When they arrived, the sky was already clearing, revealing the first stars. Emma didn't put Spirit back in the stall. Instead, she left him in the large common area of the stable, carefully dried him with soft blankets, and stayed by his side until he fell asleep, exhausted. The next morning, upon opening the stable doors, Emma witnessed something extraordinary. Spirit had approached the house on his own and was peacefully grazing on the front lawn as if standing guard. A small gesture, but to her it was a clear sign that something fundamental had changed. The storm had washed away more than earth. It had taken away a layer of fear that kept Spirit prisoner of his past. The change in Spirit after the night of the storm was remarkable. He now followed Emma around the ranch, always staying a few steps behind her. The horse that once trembled at the slightest touch now actively sought her company, gently nudging her with his muzzle when she took too long to notice him. One morning, while brushing him under the gentle autumn sun, Emma noticed something peculiar. With the new weight and improvement in his coat condition, the mark on his flank became more visible. "Tausud, what is this really?" she murmured, carefully parting the hair to examine it better. It wasn't just a breeder's mark, as Olivia had initially suggested. It was something more elaborate, a specific symbol. Intrigued, Emma photographed the mark with her phone and sent it to Olivia. The response came a few hours later, in the form of a call. "That mark?" The veterinarian's voice sounded strangely tense. "You need to talk to Thomas Wilson." "Who?" "An old trainer. Worked with some of the best racehorses in the state. Retired now. He's going to want to see this in person." 2 days later, Emma observed an elderly man with sun-weathered skin and piercing eyes examine Spirit with growing amazement. Thomas Wilson walked slowly around the horse, who remained surprisingly calm under his scrutiny. "Impossible," he finally murmured, running his hand over the symbol on the animal's flank. "This horse, he shouldn't be alive." Emma's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" Thomas indicated the bench near the barn and sat down heavily. "This horse has a name, Silver Storm. He was owned by Alexander Blackwood, one of the country's biggest racehorse breeders." He explained that Silver Storm had been considered one of the most promising colts of his generation. Natural speed, intelligence, heart. He had everything to become a champion, until the accident. During training, something spooked the horse. His jockey fell, broke his arm. Nothing serious for the boy, but Alexander, Thomas shook his head. He doesn't tolerate failures. Labeled the horse as unpredictable, useless. The old trainer spat the words with disgust. The following week, Silverstorm had disappeared. Rumors said he was sold to a farm that used special rehabilitation methods. Special methods? Asked Emma, although she already suspected the answer. Brutality disguised as training, explained Thomas, his eyes hardening. They break the animal spirit to make it submissive. Many don't survive the process. Emma looked at Spirit, who was peacefully grazing a few meters away, and he survived. More than that, observed Thomas with growing admiration. He's still here, inside that mistreated body. His spirit continues fighting. The old trainer stood up, approaching the horse again. What you've done with him is remarkable, girl. Few would have the patience or intuition required. I just gave him time and space, Emma replied simply. And that's exactly what many fail to offer. Thomas observed attentively as Spirit voluntarily approached Emma, lowering his head for her to scratch behind his ears. This horse has incredible potential. With proper treatment, he could... I'm not interested in making him a racehorse, interrupted Emma protectively. Thomas smiled. I wasn't thinking of that, but there are other ways to show the world what this animal is capable. He mentioned a competition for rescued horses that would take place in 3 months in the neighboring town. It's not about speed or brute force. It's about recovery, trust, partnership. Exactly what you two have built. After Thomas's departure, Emma sat on the porch step, thoughtful. Spirit grazed peacefully in the field in front of her, occasionally raising his head to check where she was. Alexander Blackwood, the name echoed in her mind. A man who had discarded an extraordinary animal at the first sign of trouble, who had sent him to a place where he had suffered unspeakable abuse. The idea of transforming Spirit's trauma into something positive, of showing the world what he really was, began to take shape in her mind. The next day, Emma initiated a new type of training, not to make Spirit run faster or jump higher, but to strengthen the bond between them, to translate trust into synchronized movement. It was training based on mutual respect, where each step forward was celebrated, each difficulty faced together. As the weeks passed, Spirit flourished under her care. His body, once skeletal, now displayed well-defined muscles. His white coat shone in the sun, and his eyes, once opaque with fear, now gleamed with intelligence and renewed confidence. The moment Emma finally rode him wasn't the result of insistence or force, but a silent invitation. On a clear morning, while working in the paddock, Spirit simply stopped beside the bench where she usually sat and waited, looking at her as if to say, I'm ready. With her heart racing, Emma climbed onto the bench and, moving with deliberate slowness, mounted. Spirit remained still for a moment, as if processing the new sensation, before taking a hesitant step forward. When she showed no fear or tried to control him abruptly, he relaxed, accepting her weight as a natural extension of themselves. That night, alone on the porch, Emma allowed herself to cry, not from sadness, but from gratitude. For having found Spirit, for him having found the strength to trust again, for both healing wounds that seemed insurmountable. The state championship for rescued equines was bustling with activity. Horses of all colors and builds circulated with their handlers, some still showing visible signs of past mistreatment, others already fully recovered. The event had grown significantly in recent years, attracting attention from specialized media and even some important sponsors. In the temporary stable assigned to Spirit, Emma carefully adjusted the simple halter he would wear during the presentation. No severe bits or spurs, just the minimum equipment necessary, emphasizing communication through weight, legs, and voice. So everyone's looking at you, she murmured, smoothing a strand of white mane. And you know what? They should. You're extraordinary. Spirit tapped his hoof on the ground softly, as if understanding. His eyes, once so empty, now shone with quiet confidence. Olivia appeared at the stable entrance, followed by Thomas. Both had become constant presences in recent months, offering advice, assistance, and, most importantly, believing in the unlikely partnership that had formed between the inexperienced young woman and the traumatized horse. "How's our champion?" asked the veterinarian, approaching to examine Spirit with critical eyes. "Nervous," admitted Emma. "Me, at least." Thomas laughed. "That's normal, but you're ready. The work you've done together..." The old trainer shook his head, moved. "It's the kind of thing that makes me believe in this sport again." A voice on the sound system announced that Emma's category would begin in 20 minutes. The young woman's stomach contracted with anxiety, but looking at Spirit, something calmed inside her. Regardless of the outcome, the true triumph had already happened. An animal considered irrecoverable had not only survived, but was rediscovering its true nature. The rehabilitation and trust category involved a series of exercises that demonstrated the bond between horse and handler. Each pair was evaluated by the quality of communication, the horse's willingness to follow subtle commands, and above all, by the level of mutual trust. When her turn came, Emma guided Spirit to the center of the arena. The audience fell silent, intrigued by the unusual pair, an unknown young woman and a majestic white horse that, despite some still visible scars, radiated a majestic presence. The judges, seated in the main grandstand, observed with neutral expressions. Emma took a deep breath, centered herself, and exchanged a final look with Spirit before starting the routine they had practiced for months. They began with basic exercises, direction changes, pace alterations, but it soon became evident to everyone present that something extraordinary was happening. Spirit wasn't just following commands, he was moving in perfect sync with Emma, anticipating her intentions even before she fully signaled them. When they moved to the free part of the presentation, Emma dismounted and completely removed the halter. A murmur of surprise ran through the audience. Working with a completely free horse without any control equipment was a risk few competitors took. For a tense moment, Spirit remained motionless, looking around the packed arena. Then, as if making a decision, he turned his attention back to Emma and waited. What followed left the audience in absolute silence. Moving only with subtle gestures and occasional vocal commands, Emma guided Spirit through a series of movements that more resembled a dance. The white horse executed perfect circles, smooth transitions between trot and canter, precise stops, all without any physical contact. When Emma finally extended her arm, Spirit approached and rested his muzzle in her hand, concluding the presentation with a gesture of deep trust that drew spontaneous applause. The judges, visibly impressed, quickly conferred among themselves before announcing the highest score of the day. Emma hugged Spirit's neck, murmuring, "I always knew you were special." As they left the arena, they were intercepted by reporters and other competitors, all eager to know more about the white horse that had dominated the competition. Amidst the confusion, Emma noticed a well-dressed man observing her attentively. Something in his expression, a mixture of surprise and calculation, left her instantly alert. Later, when returning to the temporary stable, Thomas approached with a worried expression. "Alexander Blackwood is here," he said without preamble. "Recognized Silver Storm immediately. He's talking to the organizers." Emma's heart froze. "He can't. I bought Spirit legally." "Alexander has influence and lawyers," replied Thomas grimly, "and he likes to win, at any cost." As if to confirm her worst fears, a tall, middle-aged man appeared in the corridor, accompanied by two assistants. Alexander Blackwood exuded cultivated authority and impatience. His tailored suit and perfectly styled silver hair contrasted with the casual atmosphere of the event. "Miss Sullivan," he addressed Emma directly, ignoring Thomas, "I understand you're in possession of my horse." Emma straightened, instinctively positioning herself between Alexander and Spirit's stable. "His name is Spirit now, and he's mine. I bought him legally at the Bridger County auction." Alexander's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A misunderstanding, I'm sure. Silver Storm was temporarily misplaced, not sold. I've already spoken with the event officials. They understand the situation." "What situation?" Emma's voice remained steady despite her racing heart. "That a valuable racehorse was stolen and must be returned to its rightful owner." Alexander gestured to one of his assistants, who handed him a folder. "I have all the documentation here. His bloodline, registration, original purchase. The officials have suggested we resolve this quietly, without involving the authorities." Thomas stepped forward. "You sold him, Alexander, after the accident, to those butchers at Pine Ridge Farm." A flash of annoyance crossed Alexander's face. "I did no such thing. If the horse was mistreated, it was without my knowledge or consent." "You knew exactly what kind of place Pine Ridge was," insisted Thomas. "Everyone in the industry knows." Alexander ignored him, focusing on Emma. "Miss Sullivan, I'm prepared to be generous. $20,000 for your inconvenience. That's far more than you paid for him, I'm sure." "He's not for sale," replied Emma firmly. "At any price." The man's expression hardened. "Don't be foolish, girl. This isn't a pet. It's a valuable asset. My lawyers will be in touch tomorrow. I suggest you reconsider my offer before then." As Alexander turned to leave, Emma called after him. "So why do you want him back? You threw him away like garbage. Now that he's healthy, confident again, suddenly he's valuable to you." Alexander paused. "What I do with my property is my business, Miss Sullivan. But if you must know, a horse that can perform as he did today has significant marketing potential. The heartwarming story of a champion's return. The public eats that up." After he left, Emma leaned against Spirit's stable door, her legs suddenly weak. The horse gently nudged her shoulder, as if sensing her distress. Thomas placed a comforting hand on her arm. "We'll fight this, Emma. That man doesn't deserve Spirit, and deep down even the law knows it." The following weeks were a blur of legal consultations, paperwork, and mounting anxiety. Alexander Blackwood had filed a formal ownership claim, and a hearing was scheduled at the county courthouse. The community rallied around Emma. Local farmers offered testimonies about the horse's condition when she first brought him home. Olivia provided detailed medical records documenting the abuse he had suffered. Thomas reached out to his connections in the racing world, quietly gathering evidence of Alexander's reputation for discarding horses that didn't meet his expectations. The day of the hearing arrived cold and clear. The courtroom was unexpectedly full, with many faces Emma recognized from the local community. Spirit remained at the ranch, but his presence was felt in every photograph, every document, every testimony. Alexander's lawyer presented their case first, a polished argument about property rights and valuable bloodlines, insinuating that the horse had been stolen rather than legitimately sold at auction. When Emma's turn came, her attorney, a kind-eyed woman named Sarah who had taken the case pro bono, presented not just legal arguments, but a story of transformation. "Your Honor, this case is not merely about ownership papers," Sarah began. "It's about responsibility, care, and the true meaning of stewardship. Ms. Sullivan didn't just purchase an animal, she saved a life that Mr. Blackwood had discarded." Witnesses took the stand, one by one. The auction manager confirmed that Spirit, or Silverstorm, had come from Pine Ridge Farm, not directly from Blackwood Stables. A former Pine Ridge employee, visibly nervous but determined, testified about the brutal training methods used there and confirmed that Alexander had personally arranged the horse's transfer. Perhaps most damaging was the testimony of a former jockey who had worked for Alexander. "Mr. Blackwood told us all that Silver Storm had been taken care of after the accident. His exact words were, 'Some horses aren't worth the feed they eat.'" Throughout the proceedings, Alexander maintained a confident expression, occasionally whispering to his attorney. But as the evidence mounted, his composure began to slip. When it was Alexander's turn to testify, he stuck to his story. The horse had been sent for rehabilitation, not sold. He had no knowledge of any mistreatment. The auction was a mistake, an unauthorized sale by Pine Ridge managers. "And if you truly cared about this horse," asked Sarah during cross-examination, "why did you never report him missing? Why did you wait until he won a competition to suddenly remember his value?" Alexander's face flushed with anger. "I don't have to justify my business decisions to you or anyone else." "No," agreed Sarah calmly, "but you do to this court." The judge, a thoughtful woman in her 60s, took several days to deliberate. When everyone reassembled for the verdict, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. "After careful consideration of all evidence presented," began the judge, "this court finds that the horse known as Silver Storm was indeed legally purchased by Emma Sullivan at the Bridger County auction. Mr. Blackwood's claim of theft or mistaken sale is not supported by the evidence." She paused, looking directly at Alexander. "Furthermore, the documented pattern of neglect and the willful transfer to a facility known for questionable practices constitutes abandonment under state law." She turned to Emma. "Ms. Sullivan, the court recognizes your legal ownership of the horse now known as Spirit." The courtroom erupted in applause. Emma's eyes filled with tears as Sarah hugged her tightly. Alexander stormed out without a word, his legal team scrambling to follow. Outside the courthouse, local news reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Emma found herself thrust into the spotlight, sharing the story of Spirit's journey from broken to triumphant. What had begun as a personal mission of rescue had become something larger, a symbol of hope and second chances. In the months that followed, Horizon Ranch transformed. Emma used the publicity from the case and Spirit's competition success to establish a small rescue program for abused and neglected horses. Donations helped repair fences, renovate the barn, and build new paddocks. Thomas came out of retirement to offer his expertise, and Olivia provided discounted veterinary care. One crisp autumn evening, a year after that fateful auction, Emma sat on the porch watching Spirit grazing peacefully with two recently rescued horses. The white horse had become not just a companion, but a teacher, showing the new arrivals by example that humans could be trusted, that fear could be overcome. A car pulled into the driveway, and Thomas emerged with a broad smile. "Channel 7 loved the story," he announced, climbing the porch steps. "They want to do a feature on the rescue program. From auction block to sanctuary, they're calling it." Emma laughed. "Spirit's going to need a bigger hat size if his fame keeps growing." Thomas sat beside her, his eyes serious despite his smile. "You know, when I first saw him at the competition, I recognized the physical potential, the bloodline, the confirmation. But what you brought back was something more valuable. His spirit," Emma said simply. "Exactly." Thomas looked out at the grazing horses. "Alexander saw him as a commodity, something to be used and discarded. You saw him as a being with his own dignity, his own worth beyond any ribbon or trophy." As if hearing his name, Spirit raised his head and trotted toward the porch. He stopped in front of Emma, lowering his head to press his forehead against hers in the gentle greeting that had become their ritual. "You know," Emma said softly, stroking his cheek, "my grandfather used to say that sometimes the things most worth saving are the ones others have given up on." Spirit nickered softly, then turned and cantered playfully back to the field, his white coat gleaming gold in the setting sun, his movement strong and free, a living embodiment of resilience and the transformative power of patience, care, and unwavering belief in another's worth. In the end, the true victory wasn't measured in courtroom decisions or competition scores. It was in every confident stride, every trusting gaze, every moment that proved what Emma had known from the beginning. Within the broken horse nobody wanted was a spirit waiting to be redeemed. My friends, we've come to the end of the story. Did you like it? What lesson can you bring to life from this story? Leave it here in the comments. Leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and watch this video that's playing on your screen. This story will impact you. See you next time.